Good afternoon, St. John. Pastor Ellsworth Tate coming, and I wanted to take this opportunity to walk with Jesus in this last week of his life. We've already started yesterday by celebrating Palm Sunday, which is actually two opposing forces meeting in Jerusalem. We have Rome being represented by Pontius Pilate, representing the kingdom of man, and we have Jesus representing Yahweh and representing the kingdom of God. These two opposing forces met in Jerusalem, and it seemed by Friday that Rome had won. But with God, all things are possible. Palm Sunday was yesterday. Today is Monday, and I will admit that I will have to do a little cheating in order to do a little cheating by reading an event that happened on Tuesday in order to help us with understanding this event on Monday. But don't worry, Tuesday has so many events that we won't be able to get through or get to everything. I'm trying to keep these lessons to 10 minutes only, 10 minutes or less, and it would help if you would read your verses before this lesson. Now, Monday, today we're looking at Mark. All of the lessons will be in Mark. Mark, the 11th chapter, 12 through 21st verses. Tuesday, Mark, the 11th chapter, 22nd through 13th chapter, and 37th verses. So it's a lot on Tuesday. And Wednesday, the 14th chapter, the 1st through the 11th verses. Okay, let's get started with Mark. Okay. Let's get started with Monday. Let me read the verses from Mark, the 11th chapter, beginning with the 12th verse. Now, the next day, when they had come out from Bethany, he was hungry, and seeing from afar a fig tree having leaves, he went to see if perhaps he would find something on it. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for it was not the season for figs. In response, Jesus said to it, "Let no one eat from you ever again." And his disciples heard it. Now, here's where we're going to go with the cheating part, because I'm going over to Tuesday, verse 20, and read what actually took place after that, the next day. Now in the morning, as they passed by, they saw the fig tree dried up from the roots. And Peter remembered, said to him, "Rabbi, look, the fig tree which you cursed has withered away." What was Jesus looking for? Jesus was looking for fruit from the fig tree. And he cursed the tree because it didn't have any fruit. And the next day, the fruit tree dried up. And of course, no one ever again will eat from that fig tree. Let us look now at the 15th verse and see how these verses pull in the same direction. So they came to Jerusalem. Then Jesus went into the temple and began to drive out those who bought and sold in the temple, and overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold doves. And he would not allow anyone to carry wares through the temple. Then he taught, saying to them, "Is it not written, 'My house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations,' but you have made it a den of thieves." And the scribes and chief priests heard it and sought how they might destroy him, for they feared him, because all the people were astonished at his teaching. When evening had come, he went out of the city. Okay, so we have Jesus now coming into Jerusalem. And he's coming into Jerusalem and coming into the temple for what reason? To find fruit. And he doesn't find any fruit. He finds something different than what he was expecting. What type of fruit was Jesus looking for? Well, when the Jews were freed from Egypt and they went to the mountain and became God's people, they made a lot of promises, not just the 10 commandments, but several promises. And one of the some of the promises that they made were that they would take care of the stranger, they would take care of the widow, and they would take care of the orphan. And so this was what they promised to do with for God and with God, being God's people. And yet, many times we find throughout the Old Testament, they strayed away from those promises. And every time they strayed away from those promises, prophets began to rise. We have Amos at one point saying to the people, saying that God had come to him and told him in Amos 5th chapter, 21st through 24th verses, he says, I despise your religious festivals. Your assemblies are a stench to me. Even though you bring me burnt offerings and grain offerings, I will not accept them. Though you bring choice fellowship offerings, I have no regard for them. Away with the noise of your songs. I will not listen to the music of your harps, but let justice roll down like waters and righteousness as a mighty stream. Many times these prophets were looking for justice in Jerusalem, and there wasn't any. And so their voices began to rise up and began to speak about what God expected. Listen to Micah. Micah 6, chapter 6 through the 8th verse. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow down before the exalted God? Shall I bring before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000 rivers of olive oil? Shall I offer my firstborn for my transgressions, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has shown you, O mortal, what is good and what is acceptable. And what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. So when Jesus came to Jerusalem and went to the temple, and he didn't see justice, he didn't see a place where God dwelt. It was supposed to be a place where Yahweh sat, a place where God's love and God's justice were displayed. But the temple had become something else. The temple had become a place under Roman control, a place where the wealthy took from the poor, a place that looked religious, but it wasn't religious. If you look inside the temple, you'll find that there wasn't even the ark there. There wasn't even the pretense that God was there. The priests weren't in the line of Aaron. They were appointed by the Roman authorities. So Jesus came to the temple and he kicked out all of those money changers. And in so doing, he cursed that temple to the place that it may never be heard from again. Now, you say that the fig tree was cursed and was gone the next day. But what happened to the temple? Well, it didn't go in the next day, but 70 AD, it was destroyed, and no one has been able to eat from the fruit of it since. May God bless you. May heaven smile upon you. Begin reading, starting with the next verse, the 21st verse, I believe, and move on all the way through the 13th chapter. And I'll see you on tomorrow. God bless you. May heaven smile upon you.